Good evening and welcome to the City Council meeting for the City of Coeur d'Alene on February 6, 2024. Call this meeting to order, and will the clerk take the roll, please?
McEvers?
Yes.
Wood?
Yes.
Gookin?
Yo.
Miller?
Here.
English?
Yes.
Evans?
Here.
Yeah, I know, I don't usually do that.
We got confused.
The first item on the agenda is our invocation, and Pastor Tyler Morton, going once. Tyler Morton, going twice. Okay, we will do without an invocation tonight. We'll go right to the Pledge of Allegiance, and I will ask Amy to lead us in the pledge tonight, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Been a long time since I was in grade school, but I still want to say good morning, Mrs. So-and-so, after the pledge. Amendments to the agenda. Dan?
Mr. Mayor, just for the convenience of staff, I would like to swap under other business items 2 and 3 so that Mr. Huzier can give both his presentations back to back.
That makes sense. We'll do that.
Thank you.
I would also call to your attention that we have a public hearing tonight, and if you wish to provide testimony at that public hearing, make sure you signed up on the right sheet. We have several people signed up tonight for public comments, and I hope that's really your intention and not testimony for the public hearing on, what's the issue? The
Zone change.
zone change.
And Midtown.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
if I may, another change is on the consent calendar. The approval of council minutes is January of 24. There was a typo there.
Okay, and you talked to them and got it corrected?
Yes.
Talk to them, talk to staff. Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll move to public comments. And the first person on the agenda, or on the request, is Cindy Donato. Good evening.
Thank you, council members. I really appreciate the time. My name is Cindy Donato. I'm fairly new to the region. I moved here from St. Louis, Missouri, working for Kootenai Health. Can you hear me? Since I've been in the community, I'm already a board member of the Economic Development Committee, and I've joined the Women's Gift Alliance, and I've bought property in downtown, committing to the region. So I've pretty quickly gotten entrenched in the community. And I appreciate some of the council members that have entertained some of the discourse about the new hotel that is proposed for downtown. I really was disappointed in the comment period and the posting. It seemed very perfunctory and somewhat of a rouse, because that opinion really has not been welcomed by anything other than the design issues itself. So I'm wondering how you represent and engage with your constituency on these kinds of issues. I want to point out that the goals and objectives of the city's comprehensive plan, there's a section CI1 that states Coeur d'Alene citizens are well-informed, responsive, and involved in community discussions. And section 1.1 states that you will foster broad-based and inclusive community involvement for actions affecting business and residents to promote community unity and involvement. And I have to say that these goals really have not been met when a significant project can be approved by the Design Review Committee, the city planning staff, and you without really engaging the community. What's the purpose of using the public notice if true community sentiment is not considered in the decision-making process? And so, as I mentioned, I feel it was perfunctory and a way to follow legal protocol to get you off the hook, so to speak, but the intent of the legal protocol has really not been served. And this breeds distrust It fractionalizes our community and is contrary to the goals and objectives of your plan. I want you to hear from constituencies because I think that would be important for you to be informed to make decisions. The city's standards for such a project were developed nearly 20 years ago. This community looked very different 20 years ago in 2006, and our community, all these years later, needs a modernized approach, a contemporary way to not just looking at the design of the property certain, right, or proper, but to look at the impact on our community. No parking studies have been done, no traffic studies have been done, no wind studies have been done, no real impact on how we preserve this special place. I have found you all to be very kind and welcoming. It's one of the things that attracted me to coming here. But frankly, I'm disappointed by not having a voice in this discourse for such an important project for the community. I thank you for your time, and I wonder what changes can be done in the process so that the community residents really have a voice for such projects and the impact analysis can be properly done and expanded in terms of the city planning department's mandate in these kinds of matters. Thank you.
Joan Woodard?
Thank you. I also moved here over 6 years ago and found the city to be a delightful place to live. I bought a condominium on Sherman Avenue right across from the proposed hotel. We have an existing problem with safety, noise, and lack of police staffing. In the summer, we're driven indoors by loud motorcycles and cars that have modified mufflers. They rev their engines, creating excessive noise and exhaust pollution. Automobiles, motorcycles, bicycles, and skateboards routinely violate the use of sidewalks on Sherman and Front Street. Vehicles don't stop for pedestrians in crosswalks, and they exceed the speed limits, imperiling the life and safety of those who want to enjoy downtown. Bikes and skateboards routinely ride on sidewalks where there is signage indicating they are not permitted. Restaurants up and down Sherman are unable to get the benefit of their sidewalk dining space, and those of us who make our homes in the area are unable to enjoy our patios and decks during the summer. We have been told that there just aren't enough police officers to assist with this problem, and it gets worse every year. These issues need to be addressed to maintain the downtown area as a safe and enjoyable place to visit for tourists and residents alike. Adding a large hotel with a restaurant and rooftop bar and lounge will exacerbate these problems. Our laws need to be respected and consistently enforced. The city should be mandating this. It is also time to review and revise the development regulations as they relate to the downtown district, as well as the policies and guidelines controlling what can and can't be built. They are 18 years old, and the circumstances that existed in 2006 were vastly different from what exists now. The effort to get businesses and people downtown has successfully exceeded our hopes with McEwen Park, this library, City Hall, as well as many new businesses and residential buildings. Millions of dollars have been spent and invested by public and private alike to accomplish this. Protecting the value of what has been created in the last 18 years is vitally important and should be reflected in policies and guidelines for new development. We are at risk of overdeveloping our downtown without detailed and updated knowledge and analysis of parking, traffic, availability of workers and workforce housing, and the basic impacts of development on views, sun and shade, and quality of life. The funding and capacity to enforce existing laws need to be a component of this effort to protect our values. I trust that you all, as our elected officials, are dedicated to this beautiful city of ours, will take this seriously and direct the city staff to address these points as quickly as possible. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you. Aileen Kohler?
Good evening, council members. Thank you for being here. The latest addition to downtown has prompted me to be here tonight with much dismay to the direction Coeur d'Alene is heading. Our downtown core is experiencing the impacts associated with noise pollution, infringement of view corridors, impacts to light, sun, and shadow, as well as shortage of parking and an increase in traffic. This would indicate that before we further lose our downtown to a ghost town in the winter and a place only populated by tourists in the summer, we need to study these impacts and create new codes, guidelines, and principles that address this. The downtown core overlay was last addressed in 2006, and we have already violated some of the stated purpose of development regulations implemented at that time. To create to create distinct, strong identity for the downtown core, preserving a civic heart for Coeur d'Alene. Where's the heart? The heart is shrinking. To encourage private and public investment, attract shoppers and visitors, and appeal to existing and new residents. There is no input sought from existing residents before plans are already approved. To preserve views of Tubbs Hill and other distant landforms, done with upper-level step-backs, along with tower size and spacing. The setbacks are not working, as views of Tubbs Hill and other landforms are being blocked for residents and visitors. To respect the small town scale and character with street-level amenities and character. When the current downtown buildings on Sherman are from 1 to 4 stories, adding a building of 75 feet against the sidewalk of Sherman and 6th is not respecting the small town scale or character. The code and development regulations for downtown core needs to be studied and changed to more properly address the fact that economic development in downtown is no longer the issue as it was in 2006, as many new buildings and residential structures have been added since that time. Back in 2006, there were very few residents in downtown. Now there are many of us, and our concerns need to be addressed as carefully as the goals of the economic development are. Thank you.
Duncan Kohler?
Mr. Mayor, council members, my name is Duncan Kohler. I'm also a resident of downtown, live across the street from the open lot across from where the Marriott Hotel is going to be built. And I just wanted to bring to the council's attention what I perceive as a problem with the way this project was approved for the most part. I didn't know this was a problem until the Design Review Committee hearing on January 25th, where we were informed that this hotel project was also already approved as of right, except for certain very specific design considerations regarding the appearance of the hotel from the outside. Decisions regarding parking, how big the building was going to be, how tall, how wide, all sorts of issues, you name them, were already decided without any public input. That was on January 25th, okay? Let me back up a little bit and give you a little bit more history about this project. Apparently, the project start was on August 1st with a project review meeting pursuant to Municipal Code Section 1709-325B. Nobody was told about that in the public. There was then a second meeting on October 21st pursuant to the same Municipal Code subsection D. Again, nobody was informed. And then on December 1st, the application by the builder of the hotel was formally submitted. It seems odd that the application would be submitted after there were already 2 big meetings about the project, but that's the case. Back in October, rumors started to circulate in the community about the hotel coming, and my wife called down to the city and said, hey, what's going on? Are there any plans that have been submitted? And she was told, no, there's no plans been submitted yet. She wasn't informed of the prior 2 meetings that had occurred or things that were already in the works for approval of this project. A little research brought to my attention section 17.09.325A, application and submittal, which says a development applicant shall participate in the design review process as required by this article before substantive design decisions are fixed and difficult or expensive to alter. The city will work with the applicant in a collaborative fashion and to address the concerns of neighbors and the community. How can that occur if the design of the building, almost all the elements of the design have already been approved before the public even gets notice of this project? So I'm sure I wasn't the only one that was surprised to find out that a project can be virtually approved, a project as big as a hotel in our downtown space, before the public's ever informed. The first public notice was published in the press on January 6th. I think that's a problem that needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Randy, could you, relative to these concerns and others that have been expressed, can you provide us, not now, but provide us with some responses to those concerns and also the process relative to this specific site?
I can do that, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, excuse me if I may, can I add on to that request that Randy provide us with some information about the required timeframe for a downtown overlay review and what that process would look like, so we have that information with the report.
Thank you. Okay, announcements. Anything from the council? Dan? You.
Thank you. So, Mr. Mayor, a couple of things. First thing is, I would like to know, now that Connect Kootenai has ceased existence, what is going to happen with the remainder of the money that I believe we were going to send them. And if I'm correct, I believe that was sent in 2 chunks. So I don't really know, 4 chunks. It was sent in 4 chunks. So I don't know how many chunks are left, how much it is. But it would be nice to know what is going to be done with that, with input from council. Did you want to say something, Troy? Mr. Mayor?
So the city has paid 1/4 of the $25,000 that was allocated in your budget. Finance Department is not sending any other money their way. And I believe I have a council member that can add on to that.
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
You certainly may.
Thank you. Thank you for that question, Dan. And what I just wanted to share is that, as most of council knows, I had been supportive of continuing to support CDA 2030, which rebranded as Connect Kootenai because of their involvement in the housing solutions I'd been working on for a long time. They opted to go a different direction, but as most of you know, I've been continuing work with regional organizations on coming up with answers to what we can do as a community on housing. I've worked with the director, Greta, Connect Kootenai, on finishing some of the projects that they took over so that we've been pretty much lockstep and those projects aren't going to fall apart. The other thing that I've been doing, and it's reference to this money, is putting together, basically resurrecting the same working group, but putting them under another organization that will provide fiscal oversight and contract management to a group that may or may not decide to become a nonprofit organization, but is going to continue the housing solutions work that has been going on for the last 3.5 years. So I had planned to do a formal presentation up in the next few months to see what council decided about how they would like to move that funding and where a good source to pursue the housing solutions would be for it. So I'm waiting for the proper opportunity on the agenda to do that, to bring the folks, once things are solidified. I'll be working with the mayor to find out a good time to put that on one of the agendas, and you'll have the opportunity to make a decision and ask questions then.
Mr. Mayor, if I could have the floor again. Thank you. I'd also like to, during our workshop with Urban Renewal, I asked a question about Mount Hink, and I know that Troy has gotten back to me just today. So we can hopefully get the numbers on how much has been spent, or I should say sunk, into that mountain. I think it's good to know, because that's all public money. So I would like to get those figures from them hopefully soon. And I would like to comment on the public comment, and I really appreciate you showing up and expressing your concerns, which are my concerns. I agree with Dr. Donato that people should have a voice in this. And that's why I've been pushing for a while to have us look once again at the downtown overlay. I think we need to preserve the historic character of Sherman Avenue. We need to look at height restrictions. We need to look at parking requirements. The Marriott Hotel is allowed by right. We are a private property rights state. And right now, the way our code is written, they can put that in. The design review thing is kind of a formality. There's only been once that I know of that design review has rejected something. Otherwise, and they don't bring up things like you mentioned, which is like how the wind is affected by a large building, which happens if you're riding a bike downtown and you go around a corner with one of these buildings, you will get knocked over if it's windy. And I think, I'm not sure, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I think our bike patrols are coming back, Chief, for downtown. So next year you will see bike patrols downtown from our police department, which is good because that'll help you guys out. But I agree, we need to look at parking. Mr. Kohler, I believe, mentioned that, or Ms. Kohler mentioned about parking and not being looked at since 2006. And yeah, we need to look at that. We got a building coming in over here at 16 stories, 3 stories have no parking. Where are these people going to park? We want people to go downtown. So we made a motion last year to discuss downtown overlay. I would like to see that put on an agenda. It was just a discussion to see if we're going to direct staff to do anything. I don't think that requires any preparation. I would just like to have a discussion to see who up here is willing to look at this and help me preserve what we have that's charming about downtown. Mr. Mayor, one more thing. I noticed that in the back of this room, it looks like some new lights that are installed, and they're horrid. They are cold lights, and I would just want to say, whoever's in charge of the room, could we put the warm lights in? Because that's just horrid. I mean, it's awful. So, I mean, do you think that's sitting back there in those ugly blue lights? I mean, come on.
I think
We
that
can do
might be
better.
part of the library's cost-saving LED replacement that we approved. I'm not sure, but I think we did approve it. It was a cost savings measure, I know, in the meetings from the
Well, you
library
made the
last year.
motion
So
for it.
These are warm lights up here, and they're LED lights. They can get warm LED lights. That is just awful. So anyway, that's
Okay, that's enough.
just me complaining.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
start one more time. The Historic Preservation Group, which our planning department works with, has also had a lot of conversations about our charming downtown. So I would, in that overlay discussion, encourage the Historic Preservation Commission to be included in any discussions about preserving the charm of downtown Coeur d'Alene.
Well, I think that in relation to the request, certainly that can be included, but I think it would be well to have a presentation on the overlay itself as it exists now, so that we are better informed about that, because it has been a long time. So, let's say in a month, Sean, is that reasonable? Okay, thank you. Anything else from council? Woody?
A quick update on Lake City Center, the old folks' home. I mean, no, it's not an old folks' home. Sorry. I'm the old folk, right? We do Meals on Wheels. You guys have been real supportive of it. The city has been real supportive of it. About 3,000 meals a year. So we are taking over Post Falls now. We're going to be making their food for their Meals on Wheels program because they've been having some financial difficulties and going through some reorg and stuff. So I just kind of wanted to throw it out there. It was kind of felt good they came to us, and we have the facilities, we have the staff, and we have the support from the city and the whole community. And it's kind of cool. We can keep things going for those folks that need to be fed. So just wanted to update on that. That starts next month.
Well, first of all, thank you, Woody, for continuing to help out with our senior center. It certainly is a great help to have you there. And secondly, that sounds like a very efficient and also very compassionate move for the center to make. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have my notes under
Yeah.
announcement. I did mention the LED lights that the library director did remind me of, but also reminded me that because of Post Falls, as being a good neighbor, we've seen a big uptick at our library because of the flooding that they had at that
Oh,
library.
sure.
So we've had a lot of folks from Post Falls coming over here, and so it's great that we're able to keep them in books.
Yeah, I saw on the news this morning that, excuse me, maybe up to 6 months or longer before they can reopen. That's real tragedy.
They are working on some homebound folks too, that also because of the CLN's bookmobile. So this group really works hard at being able to get books in folks' hands that can't quite get to that structure. So I'm proud of them for that.
Well, I have one other thing that I'd like to share with the council, and that has to do with sidewalks and snow removal. I had a gentleman come in and talk to me about it the other day, and he's correct. We don't enforce that well enough, and we see people walking in the streets between traffic and the snow berms. And we don't need to change any city codes. It's already in the codes that the adjacent owner should remove the snow. But I would like to have our staff put together a plan for greater enforcement of that. Because it's such a safety issue, number one. And secondly, I think that plan should include some public awareness, and also within that plan develop some assistance, maybe through some CDBG money, maybe listing all the commercial folks that can do that work, student clubs, Rotary and Kiwanis, maybe they can contribute to help people that are truly unable to remove their snow. But the situation now as it is, fortunately we're in between storms, but if we get another big storm, there's no place else to push that snow, but we have to get it off the sidewalks so people can, 15th Street, I see people walking in the street. I see it on 4th Street. It's just untenable, and it's just too risky. So if there'll be some pushback and some complaining, so I wanted to make sure that the council would be supportive of my doing that. Is there any objection?
I think there needs to be a lot of discussion surrounding that, because it seems we've had this before, and every year I know I've talked to streets. There used to be volunteer groups who would help folks. They just don't exist anymore. And maybe they can be resurrected, but I think, that's happened. I had, years back, a number of businesses who've said we shoveled our sidewalks, and then the snowplow came by and put it back, and we can't, how do we keep that, being an enforceable situation? So I agree it's worth the discussion, but I think there's a lot to it.
Well, I hope that our streets department and our PD code enforcement folks can talk about that and come back to us. I suppose that's a month. Is that reasonable? Chief? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
you talked about doing education. I think that's important. Troy has a standing offer from a billboard company to do free public service announcements, and so that would be a good one to take them up
Yeah,
on.
certainly. Dan?
Well, I think this is a great idea, and in the span of things that we spend money on, this probably isn't a lot, and it can really vary winter by winter, but I think we have to have something lined up, and we have to have some dollars ready to spend, because when a snowstorm happens, you can't wait till next Tuesday when the Boy Scout troop meets or something. You've got to have the commercial enterprise and probably pay the going rate, and and again, there could be some kind of a screening thing. Businesses are one thing, although, they shouldn't have to do it a couple of times, but for the residential, and especially downtown, And that's, so, yeah, I think it's a good thing and it's worthwhile, worth spending some of our time and treasure on helping to solve, so.
Well, particularly, I think, with the main routes. Okay, then we'll move forward with that. I would like to appoint Kenny Gabriel to the Personnel Appeals Board.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor respond with aye.
Aye.
Opposed with nay. Motion carries, and we thank Kenny for his willingness to continue to help us out.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move for approval of consent calendar as presented.
Second.
We have a motion second. Discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk take the roll, please?
English,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers,
Yes.
Gookin.
Yep.
Okay, next we'll move to item 1 and 3 for Todd and let him present both those issues. Welcome, Todd.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Hammond and council members. Tonight, the first one of my presentations would be a change order for a remodel project. I came to you in January 2nd, with the first change order. We had some unfortunates pop up. However, at the end of that presentation, I did forewarn you that there was a critical error in the design as far as the second floor was supposed to have been designed when it was originally built with a fire-rated corridor that goes that hallway. And once we opened up the ceiling, it was apparent that that was not enforced or in place, especially now with public safety is always number one and for our staff, so it's something we have to address. Unfortunately, it started out with a sheetrock ceiling, or there is a T-bar ceiling that you can put in. It all snowballs, so whatever you do affects the next thing and the next thing, so it's not as easy as just fixing the ceiling. We opted for the cheaper option to do the option that was first presented to us was going to cost us about $12,000 more than the option we went with. The T-bar ceiling with the special rated tile that goes up in the grid, it's a different type of grid. It's a little heavier. The tile is a different style of tile. It looks similar, but it'll look the same as the rest of the building. There's 4 clips that attach to the 4 corners of the tile so that when there's a fire, they won't blow out of the ceiling grid. Unfortunately, then you have to wrap each fixture in a fire blanket. It moves on. In this corridor, there was HVAC controls that are up there, so we have to update those. Again, it just kind of keeps trickling. So unfortunately, we are at this point to move forward. We have this change order number 2 for $32,197.89. With that, that will give us a complete corridor to allow people 30 minutes to get out of the top floor in a fire situation. We hope to be able to fund this from our existing remodel and streets and engineering budget, depending on how winter rolls, finishes out the second half, and any other unforeseens throughout the year. Our intent is to be able to absorb this in our current budget, but to balance the budget, worst case, it could move into fund balance or something like that. I anticipate us being able to, we're confident in the first change order that we can cover that. This one was unforeseen and we really can't get past it. So I would like to bring up, yesterday afternoon, Councilmember Gookin contacted me. There was a slight mistake in the spreadsheet for the funds. The total was correct. They didn't set the sum calculator in those columns, and so there was a discrepancy. Councilmember Gookin has received it. Renata was not able to get it out. I sent it to him right away once they got it fixed. But the total is correct. It was just in the columns that the numbers were wrong. At this time, I would take any questions.
You have a question?
No. Yes. I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Todd, you talked about going into fund balance maybe, but are we saving money this year with our snow budget?
That So fuel, bits and blades and chains we have not used near as many because we haven't been out as much. Something I did share with Troy recently, salt is about on par we have an average and we use the same amount of loads every year. These dry storms like this where they create ice or cool mornings, it's still that battle, and so we tend to use the same amount, but there should be some savings if winter finishes the way it looks like it's going to.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I think along those lines, you really don't have any way to predict what's going to happen.
Correct.
So the maximum you'd be looking for out of fund balance would be the 32,000.
Correct.
And I don't even know that you could tell us when you would come back to us with, looks like we're going to make it with our existing budget.
The project is supposed to wrap up on paper contractually early May. The contractor is forecasting that they think we will be finished end of March, early April. Per their contract, though, they have till early May. So at that point, there should come a point when things are winding down, and I could probably give you a report as to where we're at as we get closer to the end. We are moving into the newer part of the project, so it's not the remodel. They poured the second floor concrete yesterday, and they're starting to frame up all the new stuff. So I don't expect there to be as many surprises because it's all new. I mean, as long as they did everything right, it should be good. But I mean, I don't have a crystal ball either. But as we get into April, I would think I would be able to give a forecast of where I think we're at.
All right, and you've portrayed this as basically a serious safety issue.
Yeah, there's not really a way around it. We've gutted it and we found the problem safety-wise. I'll be honest, I tried to find ways around it. I like to find always, someone tells me no, I'm going to push harder the other direction and find something. I did talk with our building department. We are adding space to our remodel. There is a way around it, but we could only have 19 maximum people on the second floor at any time. We just increased our break room to house up to 27. So it doesn't really make any sense to spend all this money and not be able to fill all the seats. So there isn't really a way around it, no.
Thank you.
That darn fire department.
They're picky that way.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I was just going to follow up to be clear on that question. Is this a fire code compliance issue then? That you wouldn't?
I would have to talk to the chief. I mean, I would say yes, it's a code for our building department. So because of how many people, the style of use the second floor is, it requires this fire code to be in place.
It's not a want issue, it's a
No.
must-have issue?
A must-have.
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
What is your pleasure, Council? Oh, Woody?
Just one quickie. So I spent some time with Todd, doing the tour every couple of weeks, and if you haven't, you should. He can show you all the places. He's so cheap. I love this guy, and that's a compliment. He's recycling doors and door frames, and he's just, it's like it's his money, and it feels good to walk it with him, and if you've been out there at all for over the years, you can see the changes and the excitement, it's pretty interesting, and he didn't buy an elevator, so I'm pretty impressed, because those are endless, and I just hope we won't see any more changes, because he'll try and do it himself. I just know how he is. That's a compliment, by the way.
Thank you.
Okay.
Would you like to make a motion?
And with that, yes, I would love to approve Resolution 24011, change order number 2, and probably the end, in the amount of $32,197.89 to the contract with Stancraft Construction Group for Streets and Engineering Building Remodel Project. God, a lot of words.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk take the roll, please?
Wood,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers,
Yes.
Gookin.
Yep.
English.
Yes.
Okay, we're on to number 3, a revised pavement cut policy. I looked through that, and I'm really pleased to see the changes that you're making. They really make sense.
Yeah, I will share, this has become a passion of mine, if you will, since I took this position. you know, it took me a year or two to figure out where the needs were and what the problems were. The last time we redid this policy was in 1998, so we've had a lot of growth and a lot of changes. One of the things that policy covered back then was, you know, if we repave a road, do an overlay or something like that, unless it's an emergency, you can't go and just saw cut up the new asphalt for 5 years to do your work in the road. If it's emergency, obviously, there's a way around that. The thing it did not cover in that policy was chip sealing, which we do a lot of now. Even as of last year, we doubled the amount of chip sealing we're doing in a year. There was nothing in that policy to protect chip seal, so we could go and spend all this money on that road this year. For example, on Hanley, we did a bunch this last year, and a contractor could come dig up the road right now and do a tie-in or whatever they have to do, and then we have this saw cut in the middle of our freshly sealed road. So that's one thing we were looking to really address. To help with our chip seal. We have another ambitious chip seal season coming forward. We're working on getting that out to bid in the next 4 weeks for the upcoming season. And so we want to make sure it's protected. The other concerns that we have are driveway approaches, saw cuts like in this picture. This was a project for wastewater that turned out okay last year. They did everything the way they were supposed to, but things that I see as a problem in this picture that are maintenance to my department, these are all tie-ins for water services that you see. And so we don't make them patch between these spots. So my team has learned, I call this our new quilt. That's what it looks like. And it frustrates me because now, say I wanted to chip seal this road this year, I have to go and remove all these patches between the other patches because that's far enough gone that we cannot chip seal that. The only repair would be to mill it or remove it, put new asphalt down, and then chip seal over it. So this is a concern. I've talked with water and wastewater. We've had many meetings. Obviously, this comes kind of like my remodel. When I make a change, it affects their world too, because it all costs more money. In this policy, I think you would have noticed that, so 50 feet. So if there's 2 patches within 50 feet, they're required to remove the whole thing. They can't do these little cuts off to the side. That's going to save us a lot of time. My new goal is, as we do new roadway surfaces like this, as I shared last year, that we would chip seal them within 3 years of when the new asphalt went down, to get the maximum amount of life out of that road surface. So it's a goal. This looked like a really good example, not picking on wastewater by any means. It's a good, fresh visual of the problem that we have there. Another thing that's addressed in here is we've allowed people to add curb cuts in a curb line to make a driveway approach or something. Now they'll have to remove it, put the right curb in, and remove 18 inches of the roadway to get the proper amount of compaction under it, and then re-asphalt that and seal it. So there's many others. This policy is modified from what Avista uses in Spokane. We have talked to them a lot because they're equally as frustrated. They want to know what to tell their contractors to do so they can bid appropriately. I feel like it's been a while, and this has been a goal of mine for the last year and a half. Chris Bosley, myself, and my team have worked on it. I believe I have the support from our utilities. So at that point, I would take any questions.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have one question, Todd, when I was reading through this. So under the compliance section, failure to comply with any part of this policy may result in denial of future permits. So we're not going to fine them if they violate the policy and cut up our streets?
I believe for my team, I would have to check, but for my team, we don't really have that capability. We can hold permits, we can hold back permits and issuing them. I'm not sure how that would work on finding them.
I'm just curious about enforcement, and that if someone thinks, I can get away with this, because I'm not going to do anything else, this is my only, and, I mean, it's just a question.
Okay? I don't know the exact answer. I will get back to you on that. Streets and engineering, typically, we are not able to find, back to the previous conversation, we fight with a lot of citizens on snow removal, and we instruct them that they're doing something wrong or not doing it right. We call code enforcement. They're a great help, but we don't actually get to do the fine.
Okay.
Well, this is certainly a good idea. The quilt, as you call it, it just creates poor streets all over, and there's no way to ensure that we can have a non-porous sections when we're making all those cuts and patches. So I hope the council will support this. Woody?
Couple of questions. Todd and I talk streets a lot. Can you kind of give us a general of why our streets are so special here? And I've been I always say it should be thicker, it should be compacted tighter, and you go, would you tell that story just shortly? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Well, I will tell you they're special because I try and take a lot of pride in them, but that being said, we have the freeze thaw is a problem for us. We have roadway surfaces that there is only 2 inches or sometimes less of asphalt. My team has done really good in the last 12 months. We had an interesting scenario where one contractor wouldn't even pave it because the prep wasn't done right. The previous year, we had rejected their product and we made them redo it. So we're doing that more often now. We do reject products. The contractors are recognizing that. The new section of Hanley this year, you notice they got the asphalt mat down the road. They didn't do the path, the trails on both sides. It was too cold and I wouldn't let them pave it. They weren't very happy about that. So we're trying to change those kind of policies. The frost, the wet and the freeze cold, the freezing and the warming up, that's always problematic. The first part of this winter, before the cold snap, we didn't have a lot of potholes. After that cold snap and all the frost in the ground, everything swells, and so those thin mats have problems. Another issue that I hope to bring to you by this spring and talk about is load limits. Everybody around us does load limits. We do not. It's very hard on our road surfaces to be running loaded trucks full, and everybody knows. You can watch them. As soon as they get to the city limits, they pull up all their extra axles and they just cruise down the road. So that's something we're hoping to work on as well, is load limits. But our biggest thing is the weather. Even the heat of the summer, it's gotten hotter here. We've had problems where it does shoving when big loads are driving down a hill and they hit their brakes, the asphalt actually bunches up in front. If it's a thin mat, that seems to happen more. So we're trying to get in front of it with chip sealing and sealing the roads to keep the moisture out of the surface or the subgrade. But, we can only do one street at a time. This is a great step here to help allow, make sure that the roads are taken care of.
So just a quick relationship, if 4th Street has been crumbling for a while up north, and I'm seeing asphalt and I'm seeing concrete, and that's kind of historical, right? That they tried different things in the past?
So we have a plan we've talked about doing. It is expensive to do a complete reconstruct like Celti's, other parts of 4th Street. It used to be a concrete road. It probably averages 10, 12 inches thick, so it's a lot of material to get rid of. It's very expensive to fix. We try and patch it through the year, but we're running out of patches, so we've talked about, now that we do so much grinding, to grind the asphalt off and try and reslope, get a different elevation and pave over it again with a thicker mat. But eventually, the proper fix would be to remove the concrete and start from scratch.
That's same with 15th.
Very expensive.
15th Street, the same, south of Appleway? Best.
15th Street, at this point, is just asphalt, but it's deteriorated to the point where when we do this project, which we're moving forward on, that would be a complete reconstruct. So we would remove all of the asphalt and start from scratch.
I'd say you have some job security there, Todd.
We're getting closer on 15th. We've been about a year into the design now, so but still probably at least another year before we're complete.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Todd, when you do new construction, you have, or require the contractor to have labs do nuclear density and core tests, et cetera, don't you?
Yep, yeah, in all new construction, they do those kind of
Thank you.
tests, yes.
How about a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 24-013, approval of a revised pavement cut policy for the city.
Second.
We have motion second for the discussion. Seeing none, will the clerk take the roll, please?
Miller,
Aye?
McEvers,
Yes.
Gookin,
Yep.
English,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
And now we have Glenn. Welcome, Glenn.
Mayor, council members, I have a presentation for you this evening for the recommended purchase of a contract for meter boxes for our annual maintenance projects in the amount of $85,311.58. On an annual basis, we replace approximately 200 to 300 meter pit settings, and that has to do with service line upgrades, service leaks, moving meters from basements out to the street. These meter boxes house a very vital portion of our infrastructure, our meter setters and our water meters that we read and are able to, excuse me, get our revenue. So these were brought into our system about 20 years ago. ArmorCast salesman came into town and recommended that we try these. We found that they were a very, very strong product for us. As you can see in this, these are a sample of our lids and meter boxes. And this is a backhoe that shows the strength and durability of these boxes, and it's sitting up on top of 3 of those. That's about a 17,000-pound machine. So they take the beating that the traffic and trucks and everything that drive over them on a daily basis. So we solicited 3 quotes from our normal vendors. Consolidated Supply was the lowest. And then they were in competition with HD Fowler and Ferguson of Spokane. These are a direct replacement, basically, of the concrete meter boxes that were used years ago. Concrete meter boxes are heavy and cumbersome, and they're also very, very brittle. These newer boxes that we use today are a polymer concrete, and they've got fiberglass embedded in them, so they're much more stronger. We can basically lift those boxes in the backhoe bucket and drop them from 20 feet up, and they're going to hit the ground and still be usable to put in the ground. So we don't have to come back to our these meter pit settings very often after we redo them, but if we do, we've dug boxes out of the ground that are 15 years old, and we clean them up and we can throw them right back in the ground. So they've been a very durable product for us. So. We recommend that the council should approve this agreement to purchase these meter boxes so we can continue with our annual maintenance projects. And I would open the floor for any questions.
Questions? Woody?
It's a quick one. I love this stuff. So these are the ones that go in your lawn where it goes to your house,
Correct, yes.
but they're concrete, or they're prefabbed.
Yes, they're a polymer concrete, and don't ask me what chemical makeup all that is.
I don't wanna
but
know.
We just know that they're pretty dang durable.
But is it handwork, or is it tractors that lift it? And
These are light enough for us to move by hand.
Really?
The concrete meter boxes, when they get on a bigger scale for like a 2-inch meter setting, I mean, it takes 2 people at least to be able to manhandle these boxes. These ones have the fiberglass reinforcement, so they're much lighter than we would normally have to deal with.
and the depth stays the same, how deep they
Correct, yeah. These meter boxes, we purchased them as a set, and they're about 44 inches tall. That allows us, with the cold temperatures that we had, for that ground heat to come up through the box and heat the meter, so we don't have as many freeze-ups as we would incur if these were much shallower meter setting.
are. That's awesome.
So
Any other
there's a couple
questions?
of pictures of some of our guys that are replacing service lines. There's a picture of the finished product, and then these are meter setters, and these is what the boxes go over to protect the water meter, and this is how we house our valves and shutoffs and stuff.
Yeah, I had a chance to visit with some of your guys out thawing lines during that last freeze. It was tough work, and they were all over thawing lines, so we appreciate that. How's that new director working out for you guys?
It's doing pretty good.
I put you on
I
the
would
spot.
appreciate a motion.
Yeah, I'd like to,
Mr.
go ahead, Amy.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 24-012, approval of the purchase of water meter boxes from the lowest responsive bidder, Consolidated Supply Company, in the amount of $85,311.58.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk take the roll, please?
Evans?
Yes.
McEvers?
Yes.
Guggen?
Yeah.
English?
Yes.
Wood?
Yes.
Miller?
Aye.
Motion carries. And next, we have our Chief of Police, Lee White, has some exciting proposal for us. Welcome, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's no secret that there's a bit of an opioid problem in the United States, and the city of Coeur d'Alene has much of the same issues. A complete search of all of our calls for service from 2023 with the word overdose in the call notes yielded 193 calls for service last year. Now, while many of those calls, those overdoses, are not opioid related, we also know that there's a great number of overdoses that go unreported to law enforcement. We don't have any solid statistics on the exact number of people affected by opioids in our community, but our first responders, deal with the effects of opioids, including the synthetic opioid fentanyl, almost daily. Hearing about the effects of opioids from people in the news or for me standing up here at a podium does little to illustrate the true impact of these deadly substances. But the effect they have on our community, and those struggling with opioid use disorder, and the friends and family of those people is profound. In one recent example, our officers responded to a call where a mother had overdosed on top of her 3-year-old child. What made the situation worse was when officers arrived, the other child, a 5-year-old, was still trying to pull his sibling out from underneath his dead mother. Our officers and firefighters respond to these types of calls far too often. And as one of my officers recently remarked, you cannot unhear the sound a mother makes when she learns that her child has died of an overdose. The police department's been trying to find a way to combat opioids in our community, but with our current staffing model, we only have one officer dedicated to drug enforcement. It's completely inadequate for a city of our size and for the issues that we're dealing with almost daily out there. Some time back, the city was party to a class action lawsuit against opioid manufacturers and distributors. The lawsuits were settled, and the city's portion of those funds was a little bit over $1.3 million. These funds are paid in irregular installments over multiple years, and there's approximately $894,000 remaining to be paid out. In 2022, the city reallocated its share of funds to Panhandle Health. Now, Panhandle Health has already allocated 20% of those funds, the settlement funds from the state, and so far about $251,000 was reallocated to Panhandle Health from the city of Coeur d'Alene funding. I spoke to Don Duffy and his team from Panhandle Health just last week about our plan to create an opioid task force, and he told me and asked that I relay this to council, that he and his team support our plan and the revocation of our pass-through funding to them. Don Duffy is here tonight if anybody has any questions of him. He and his team clearly understand the opioid problem and support our partnership to combat this issue. According to the Idaho Attorney General's Office, that's the group who oversees the distribution and use of funds, the city needs to revoke reallocation of the funds to Panhandle if we wish to use those funds internally. This is a simple process in which a short letter is sent indicating our desire to revoke reallocation of the funds. The concept of operations that I want to bring to you tonight is that we would have a sergeant and an officer who are dedicated to dealing with this crisis. What they would do is they'd respond to all the overdose calls that our cops that we get dispatched to, and provide assistance to the family members as well as the people who are in crisis. Remember, it's not just the person who's suffering from the opioid addiction, it's also friends and family who are around that individual who are in need of resources. These officers and the sergeant would put those people in touch with community resources. That group would also provide training for first responders and for the community. I would tell you that we have a supervisor in mind for this task force, and he's already been doing training on a semi-regular basis. If my information's correct, he did just one last week and one the week before that. He would continue that and expand upon that. One of the other things we hope to do is provide some extra training for our school resource officers, excuse me, and school staff to expand the information that we can give to teachers and educators and staff of School District 271. Some of the other requirements of these individuals are that they coordinate and engage with nonprofits, health districts, post-conviction school services, and I already spoke about the school staff. And then lastly, we want this group to conduct investigations into who's bringing these illegal substances into our area to stem that tide. We've had, through our partnership with the U.S. Attorney's Office, success on a couple cases that you might have read about in the paper over the last couple of years, in what the Attorney's Office calls a but-for case, meaning we go after the distributor or the dealers of these opioids for mostly kind of like a manslaughter type charge. Meaning that was it not for this individual dealing drugs to this individual who overdosed and then died, the individual would not have died. And they've had some successful prosecutions in that regard. The proposal that we have in front of you is to have one sergeant, one officer who are dedicated to this task force to complete the duties that I just spoke about. We have already one officer, as I spoke about, that's responsible for drug activities and drug investigations in the city, and that officer would assist these other two who are dedicated to the opioid problem. The approximate personnel cost for this plan is $261,000 annually. And the task force, though, since we don't have funding at this moment, since it's been reallocated to Panhandle Health previously, our plan is to begin it once funding is secured and City of Coeur d'Alene begins receiving funding, so that would be presumably in the beginning of fiscal year 24-25. If council decides to proceed, there's really two steps to this. First and foremost, the city needs to revoke reallocation of future settlement funds from Panhandle Health and keep those in the city. And then secondly, if you wish to proceed with our concept of operations, we need to increase our authorized staffing by one sergeant and one officer for the next fiscal year. We recognize this is a huge problem in our community. I'm hopeful the council will help us combat this epidemic by revoking the reallocation agreement with Panhandle Health and authorizing the creation of the opioid task force. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Questions?
Mr. Mayor, I have a couple.
Yes.
First of all, thank you for your work on this. It's certainly needed, and I just really appreciate the effort. I have a couple questions. When I was reading through the concept of operations, bullets 1 through 3, at least in my packet that I can see, it's no longer up there, brought to mind some of the work done by our fire department as well as PD. So my question for you is, if our fire department has been looped into this, is first question. Second part of that, would it make sense to partner with them as part of the task force as well, if they so desire, to broaden that task force? A partnership between PD and fire, I would imagine, could offer a broader reach, potentially. So just curious of discussions and maybe a suggestion as well.
Sure. So there's a whole bunch of moving parts when it comes to combating the opioid crisis. Obviously, when someone overdoses, police and fire both respond to those. Panhandle Health has some fantastic programs, and they've been working with our fire department. A recent one that I just heard about, and I think it's going to be rolled out in the next few weeks, is a naloxone leave-behind program, wherein they provide equipment to our EMS folks, and so when they respond to an overdose, they leave behind a Narcan kit along with resources and a little kit to help people lock up their opioids that they might already have in the home and things like that. I guess in direct response to your question, part of the duties of the sergeant responsible for this task force would be to make sure that we have an ongoing coordination with fire in our response to these calls, and also our training that we're providing to the fire folks, and also the law enforcement and the school staff and the post-conviction services such as probation and parole and things like that.
So discussions have been held. I mean, that's kind of the partnership, and that's what it looks like.
The discussions regarding the use of this task force have not yet, mostly just because it's a brand-new concept.
Okay.
We haven't got that far, but we do work cooperatively with our firemen on a very regular basis with
Thank you.
this.
Christie?
Thank you. Chief, the concept of the team, is it similar to the CAT team? I mean, well, they're almost kind of detectives, but they're also responding as patrol.
It's somewhat similar, yeah, because there is a community outreach component that needs to be met. There's also some coordination that needs to happen. So it's similar in that regard. That the CAT team wasn't just about enforcement; it was also about meeting with community groups and that sort of thing. I would tell you, we're not going to wrest ourselves out of this problem. It's going to take an effort with us working with groups like Panhandle Health and others to get people the treatment that they need when it's appropriate. The biggest piece that I think law enforcement can do here is, since we are one of the groups that's called when someone overdoses, is to provide immediate assistance to the friends and the family and also the person who's overdosed, but also take the next step in figuring out where the drugs came from and how do we stop it from happening again.
So in that regard, they're detectives as well.
Yes.
What kind of cooperation will you get from the other agencies? Because as you know, these crimes take us sometimes outside of the city. What kind of cooperation can we expect from the Sheriff's Department, ISP, Post Falls?
We had conversations with ISP just this week, again, about this. We already have a task force member who's signed over at ISP, and they work in conjunction with folks from county and with DEA. We haven't had any direct conversations with the Sheriff's Department about this concept, just because it's brand new, and I wanted to make sure that council would approve the concept before we started having really open conversations about just the opioid task force. But insofar as our investigation of drug crimes and things like that, we work with our partners on a very regular basis.
And then finally, I'd just like to compliment Mr. Duffy. You're in the audience, can you? Thank you. It does take a much larger community to work on this rather than just the police department. So thank you for your organization for stepping up and understanding what really can be done here.
Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So let's talk about something near and dear to my wallet, money. You said approximate personnel cost is $261,000 and change. Okay. And then doing some math, the city's share of the funds is $1.3 million over 18 years, which works out to $73,500. So is it fully funded?
The way that the funding stream works in the settlement terms is the people who are paying those funds can pay them how they want. For instance, the funding that we received year one, some of the parties in the settlement paid for the first 3 years or first 4 years in year one, and then some of them didn't pay anything in year two. I guess what I'm saying is there's no regular funding source. It's not like you can divide it over 18 and get the number of funds are going to come in every year. I mean, obviously, since $251,000 came in year one, that math doesn't work. In my conversations with the Attorney General's office, they assume that many of these folks are going to pay their obligations earlier rather than later. Rather than stretch it out over the full 18 years, they'll be paying much of this on the front end. The other thing that I heard was there is likely an additional settlement coming down the road with the distributor, not with the manufacturer, but with the distributor. So there might be additional funds that are under the umbrella of this settlement that would be coming to the city. I guess what I'm saying is the $73,000 number that you have in your head is unlikely to be paid in any 1 year. It's likely that the number is going to be much higher than that in the front end and much lower than that in the back end.
So this sounds like a great program, but what happens when the money runs out?
We would come back to council. Our idea is to come back to council in approximately 4 years. With 261 anyway, we did some math and saying about 4 years, and figure if you want PD to just absorb those positions, or if we want to continue this program.
Thank you.
Dan?
Well, I remember when this came through, and I appreciate that we had Panhandle Health as a way to, kind of a windfall with a purpose that came through, and we weren't really ready. But frankly, I was a little uncomfortable that we weren't going to be hands-on as good as, the work with Panhandle Health and treatment prevention is good, but again, I think for us as a city, okay, we had some funds came earmarked to us. We ought to be the ones that put them into our system to specifically really do that. And so I like that this is a kind of a multi-layered, but where we're going to be driving the process on this. So, yeah, I will look forward to future reports, but yeah, being out there in the treatment community, I mean, this, touches everybody, so.
You touched on something there. There are some tight strings on how this money can be used. It's not like the city can just take it in and use it how we wish. There are certain criteria that must be met in order for us to retain these funds and to use these funds. What we did is go through there and then develop this concept of operations and then send it to the Attorney General's office to make sure it fits with the settlement criteria. And we received information back. And not only did I speak to the deputy down there, but also got a written email back from her indicating that this appears to be a valid use of those funds.
Good.
Kiki?
Thank you. I think this is a great idea, and I hope it is a valid use of those funds. How does this interact with the Kootenai County Drug Task Force? And I think that's still in existence. So I guess it's been around a while. I see coordinate and engage with nonprofits, and that's a Herculean effort to do the same thing. So I'm just concerned about duplication of services and using up resources. And, how does this engage with some other task force
That's a
rather
great
than
question.
jurisdictions?
So the drug task forces, the groups that are already in existence, don't focus just on opioids. We spend a lot of their time dealing with things such as methamphetamine, and a whole host of other drugs that you can think of. The primary goal of this group, though, would be not only to investigate opioids specifically, or the synthetic version fentanyl, but also do something that our drug task force members obviously don't, and that's respond to these overdoses and also do the community outreach that you just spoke about. Our drug task forces, they're primarily investigators. They work with informants and undercover activities and that sort of thing, sometimes in the city, but oftentimes it actually leaves the county and leaves the state to follow those back to the folks who are distributing the drugs here. That small part of this opioid task force, we'd be working in conjunction with those folks. It's not that unusual for our investigations to overlap, but part of the coordination that the sergeant will do is make sure we're deconflicting those things. So we might be chasing the same person, and that might be okay because we can combine resources on certain investigations, but we also don't want to step on each other's toes. And so the conversations that I spoke about earlier that we had with ISP, I think it was this week, it might have been late last week. Anyway, that's a big step in there to make sure that we're not overlapping efforts.
Deconflicting.
Yes, ma'am.
That's a new word for me. I like it.
Woody?
Can I help?
Oh, I have a question. So this,
That's why I called on you.
you're sort of dealing with the end fact, people are dead, yes?
Not necessarily. They can overdose, but it can be a non-fatal overdose. We would still respond to those as well.
Okay, so
There's much more non-fatal overdoses than there are fatal overdoses in our community.
So Narcan fits into this somewhere.
Absolutely,
right?
yes, sir.
Can you tell me a little about that?
Narcan basically reduces or eliminates the effects of an opioid if it's delivered in a timely manner. Our officers carry it in their cars. Our EMS folks carry it as well. There's a Father Bill's Kitchen has I just learned about this from Panhandle Health. It's a great resource for the community. There's actually a vending machine that's free where people can go and get Narcan. I believe I think Panhandle is thinking about putting one at the skate park, if I'm not mistaken, if it hasn't already been done. So yes, Narcan is a piece of this.
So Narcan can save somebody from an overdose, and then you guys step in to the investigation side? Is that how I'm hearing it?
Yeah, that's a piece of it. The other piece is to provide resources to those folks. So look, it happens very frequently where someone is suffering from some opioid use disorder, and they want help, but they don't know how to get it. They don't know what resources are available. We can bridge that gap and put them in touch with folks from Don Duffy's group or Heritage Health or wherever they think might be appropriate, or give them a ride to the crisis center for the night or something like that. The second piece of it would be to investigate the individuals who are supplying the drugs to those people. It's not uncommon at all for our officers just to begin speaking with the person who's overdosed, and they want out and they want to help us, and so they begin giving us information that might tie into an existing drug investigation or something like that, so we can stem the tide of the opioids from coming into our community.
Somebody, I don't know if it was you, somebody told me that Narcan is also part of your world because you're touching the stuff. You're dealing with it close. EMS, same way, right?
We have Narcan in our building for just that reason. We don't want to have one of our officers exposed with our, say, packaging evidence. So we have some emergency Narcan kits in the police department.
It gives a different perspective on Narcan. I thought it was saving people and saving our guys too, right? Keeping them safe. Thank you. This is pretty cool.
Really, this is, and as my understanding, it's an effort to move beyond just enforcement to enabling officers to be able to provide some direction to these people in terms of resources available to help them move away from the drugs.
You're absolutely correct, sir. Yes.
Motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, I'd make I motion for resolution number 24-014, revoking the voluntary reallocation of the city's share of Idaho State opioid settlement to Panhandle Health District, and approving the use of said funds to create an opioid task force by adding 2 positions to the police department in FY 24-25 for that purpose.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Before we vote on this, Don, was there anything further you wish to add? If you would like to come up. Thank you, Don.
Well, thank you, Mayor and council members. Thanks for the work you do. We are so supportive and excited for Chief White's vision on this. This is a great way to go for the city. Your funds have been used in very efficient manners since you chose to allocate to the health district. Narcan distribution, you heard about the work with Coeur d'Alene Fire. We worked with the Coeur d'Alene School District. We've had parent meetings all within the city. But also, you read recently in the paper about the ILED program, or Idaho Law Enforcement Diversion Program. That was started with money that you provided to the health district and now is copied throughout the state. And so thank you so much for that. But the work that Chief is doing, what his vision is, we feel is a better use of those funds. We will continue to do the same programs I just mentioned with the funds that we have received. So thank you so very much. That's all I really want to pass on to you today.
Thank you, Don. Will the clerk take the roll, please?
McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Yep.
English?
Yes.
Wood?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Miller?
Aye.
Well, welcome, Mike. You want to buy some loaders?
Well, yeah, I do. So yeah, it's not an easy presentation to follow. So we'll make this one easy for you. The city's wastewater department uses 2 large loaders, as you see pictured here. Ours are dirtier than that most of the time, but we use 2 different loaders to create our Coeur d'Alene compost. Our buckets, these are about 6-yard buckets, and we have about 5,000 yards of material that we make every year. I can't even help making those punny jokes. I'm sorry.
We all help make it.
But so we're obviously needing some rather large pieces of equipment, and we started leasing these 5 years ago, and that lease expires March 5th. So we wanted to come forward to you with our idea is to purchase them off lease. So I wanted to present to you some of the options that we looked at. I broke this down into what seemed to make sense to me and hopefully makes sense to you. It's keeping the existing loaders, or leasing brand new loaders, or purchasing used loaders. incorporated into the cost of keeping the existing loaders, because they're now 5 years old. We rolled in an extended warranty to cover the powertrain and the hydraulics, because things wear out. So we added $34,000 for that. I'll explain sort of, I'll try to rush through this so you can, but just so you understand where I'm coming from. The yearly lease payment, this is $45,000. That's for both of them, times 5, because they're 5 years. And then the final buyout for it is $260,000. So the grand total for our 2 loaders is $504,000. If we were to lease new loaders, you can see the associated costs here. The costs have gone up pretty substantially. These are 2 similar loaders to what we use now, and excluding the cost of that 3-year warranty, you can see the cost has gone up $170,000 or so. Else, we could purchase used loaders, return these, they're off lease, and we try to find something of similar hours and whatnot, and we, sorry, my mouse is moving and it is not me doing it. The final payment would be, for those would be $456,000. There is no lease, obviously, if you're purchasing used. It would just be $456,000 for the cost of those. But just for clarity's sake, I thought I'd make it obvious, we've already paid this chunk here. We've been leasing them for the last 5 years. So that $45,000 for 5 years, it's already been paid. So that brings our funding needed to only $294,000 to buy out these. That includes that $260,000 final payment and the extended warranty cost. And the others remain exactly the same. You can see here that a similar loader used on the market is about $456,000 for the 2 loaders. So if you did not think it made sense for us to purchase these, I would highly suggest we at least purchase them and sell them, because they're worth quite a bit more than what we're needed. So just that's due to the cost of inflation. We really, better to be lucky than good. And the cost of the heavy equipment went up substantially. The loaders have been working fine for us, broken hydraulic hose here and there, maybe an electronic component, a board or something like that failing. But that was the reason for purchasing the extended warranty. So, oh, geez, how'd that get in there? I'm sorry. Well, as long as it's up. Just a reminder that we're having our compost giveaway, annual compost giveaway. It's the weekend after Easter, April 6th and 7th. But with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
I've got a question. Have you ever sold used cars before?
It's an easy one. It's like, would you like me to basically give you a loader?
What a deal.
He looks pretty spiffy.
Well, I don't see any question. Well, Woody does have
I always
one.
have to have a question. It's the sewer.
A little history.
So I remember back when before we ever leased, and it seemed like Troy came up with this great idea because the cost of maintenance was covered. If a tire goes bad, it's almost a lease payment and things like that. Do you take that into consideration with purchasing something you've had for 4 years, 3 years?
It's been 5 years now.
5 years.
Yeah, so that is a consideration and why we thought it wise to get that extended warranty. We were able to get a pretty decent price on it because of the low hours that we had, or low, comparatively low, just compared to construction equipment or somebody like that who's using it and beating it up all the time. We were able to get a pretty good deal on that. So we thought that would be cheap insurance to help cover those, offset those costs. We don't expect this to last 20 years. Our anticipation is if we can last 5 years, we'll have an asset that's worth probably the 2 of them combined $250,000 that we could sell and use it to possibly finance the next ones. It seemed to be a pretty good option the first time around.
And do you guys do your own maintenance on them?
We don't. The streets department does, but there is maintenance included in the lease and as well.
So if you lose a tire, it's covered in that?
It is not. We've never lost a tire.
Or then wore one out.
But yeah, I don't know honestly.
You're dealing with the soft stuff, right? You're not dealing with the hard
Right.
surfaces.
So we're driving it on pavement, so it's easier than bouncing all over the place, and it's also a relatively light load compared for the cubic yards that we're hauling. It's pretty light. If you've ever gone out there and been one of these people shoveling, you'll know it's not horrible to shovel.
Yes, it is.
Oh.
I have done that.
Thank you. With that, I'd move, oh, go ahead.
Well, I think that we have another question.
Maybe.
Yes,
Thank you,
Dan.
Mr. Mayor. So I remember when this came up 5 years ago, and it was controversial because you guys wanted to buy these things, and split vote of council, mayor made the decision that we would lease them instead. And I looked at the numbers in here, and it's kind of confusing, but in the end, are we ahead or are we behind based on that decision we made 5 years ago?
Well, it's hard to tell. Strictly financially, we are behind because there's an interest rate on the lease. But there was service that was also involved in the lease, so there might be some offset in costs there that might not have been included if we purchased it outright.
And I assume the cost of a new one would be much more expensive now than it was 5 years ago.
Right, yeah, it's looking at, like I said, those were lease comparables, so that interest rate, that's probably more expensive now, but we still get a pretty good rate on those. But you can see the difference in cost is 25% increase at least.
Oh, yeah, it's insane.
So it's substantial.
So, and how much longer are we going to get these for? I mean,
We're buying them. We can
we're
keep them
buying
forever.
so we will have them forever.
But
Okay.
we won't. Yeah, we anticipate using them for 5 years or so before it's, hey, we're just, the investment is too much, and we're having to replace tires or some rather expensive thing, and we'll get rid of it at that
Okay,
point.
thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make, to approve of Resolution 24015, approval of final payment of 2 loaders leased from Western States Equipment.
Second.
Have a motion second. Seeing no further discussion, will the clerk take the roll, please?
Gookin.
Yep.
English.
Yes.
Wood.
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Miller.
Aye.
McEvers.
Yes.
Does anyone need a break?
Oh, yeah.
We're going to take a 5-minute recess.
Okay.
And we are back. Thank you for your patience. And now Troy Tymason is before us with some staffing recommendations. Troy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Hammond. Council members, I come to you tonight seeking your permission to go forward and recruit for a treasurer/finance director for the city of Coeur d'Alene. It is currently in the role of the city administrator. Your organizational chart is about as flat as you can draw up. On the slide, you'll see mayor and council with the red rectangle, and below that is the role of city administrator. That role currently houses your appointed city treasurer as well. You have your city attorney and your city clerk, who are awesome colleagues that are all appointed by you. So we have a change coming forth that I'd like to ask your permission to go recruit, bring you a qualified candidate so that we could fill the city treasurer/finance director, which currently is under my role as well. So in 2018, the city's finance director treasurer was promoted to city administrator. The title stayed with me as I moved to administrator. By statute, the city treasurer is an appointed position approved by mayor, brought to council for final approval. They oversee all the monies belonging to the city. The treasurer accounts for each fund, or appropriately making annual budget appropriations and listening to council in order to do that. The city administrator retained that title, as we've stated, and we backfilled the position with a very competent comptroller. At that time, it was the deputy finance director. The leveling process at the city moved the pay grade from deputy city finance director, grade 15, to comptroller, grade 17. We did not know when we put together this financial plan that comptroller, although having a very, very solid record with the city, is going to retire in May of 2024 after 33 years with this city. That's what is prompting this look into it. This city administrator has 23 years with your great city, and honored to be here that long, first of all, and secondly, to serve with the team that we have. In looking at a concentration of duties with one position, an outside consultant would say you have a concentration for city administrator and city treasurer all in the same person. Idaho Code allows, with council, to appoint the city treasurer. Thank you for allowing me to do that for a number of years. So we'll look at other cities that have a treasurer. All the major Idaho cities do, and all cities of our size and even smaller. I like the title finance director. It's not recognized in code, thus the reason it should be called treasurer. But at the city of Coeur d'Alene level, pushing 420 employees and $140 million, treasurer understates what the roles are, but it is in code that way. Our neighboring cities, including Post Falls, Spokane, our big cities, Boise, Twin Falls, Meridian, Caldwell, Pocatello, Kootenai County, all have treasurer/finance directors. So we are looking for your input on this direction, combined with the fact that budgetarily we don't know who it is that would potentially fill this position, so we looked at where we're at. Our comptroller, after 33 years, is maxed out in the salary grade 17 at $120,016. If we were to find a candidate that could come in at the pay grade 19, which still exists on the books and has been leveled at grade 19, there could be a savings in year one if they came in at the minimum. We're not quite sure who it would be, but for market wages, we've looked at these comparable cities that we've mentioned, and it is at about $131,000 on an annual basis for a treasurer/finance director across the state and over into Washington. So obviously, going forward, this would be a commitment to keep the wage at a comparable level knowing that there are increases that would occur. So going forward, there's about a $30,000 maximum change if we move into a finance director treasurer position at grade 19. It's about a 25% swing between grade 17 and grade number 19. We've put together this staff report for your consideration, and I would entertain any questions you might have.
Christie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Troy, well, first of all, I think we owe a great gratitude to Vonnie, who served us all these years, and now we're going to go out and we're going to raise the pay, but that happened to me too when I worked here. You didn't put in the packet, I don't believe, and maybe I missed it, the qualifications. Number one, I'd be interested in what the qualifications are, and number two, I'd be really interested in that it will be a national search. And I mean, it seems like people don't retire from these positions that often. When you get to start with a clean slate. Not that she did a wonderful job. I don't want to say it like she didn't. But we do have an opportunity to go out and recruit at a national level. And so do you have qualifications that you're?
Yeah, we have a job description and what recommendations are, years of service, experience that they might have. Yes, we will recruit, and because all the director positions we have done outside recruitments for. I think council's been totally comfortable with that. So yes, we look to recruit and open this up.
Great, thank you.
Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Troy, when we hire the new treasurer, we would transfer the title from you to the treasurer. That's
correct.
So you're not giving it up now?
I am not.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Woody?
Oh, I was just thinking about the 6 years that you've been carrying both of them. So we've been saving some money for those 6 years. You've been double dipping the job, not the pay.
Double dipping.
Yes?
I would say we did a modification, reorganization based on the personnel that you had. The comptroller definitely carries the weight of finance, but there's a portion that the treasurer assists with as well, primarily on your bonding, primarily on your investments. We dovetail with, Vonnie Jensen is not officially family, but after 23 years of working with somebody, you know them really well. And so that relationship, I would stand up to anyone with our finances that we've had, audits that I can show you, and the progress we've made. But yes, if that had been a backfill from my role, it would have cost more.
Okay. Thank you.
Kiki?
Troy, so I'm clear on this. If this occurs, that the finance director treasurer is appointed, you will no longer have that, and the comptroller position will be eliminated?
That is my game plan, and then we would like to come back and have, again, it depends on how it plays out, because there's people that we're moving. I'm hopeful we have an internal candidate for this position as well. That would free up a spot. So again, we don't know what the future holds, but I would propose to you that today the comptroller would not be re-energized as a position at the city.
So if we remove that title from your shoulders, then we'll probably save about $50,000 on your salary.
I was hoping not to have that come forward, sir.
You'll be able to do more, huh?
Correct.
Hang in there, okay.
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion to provide direction and budget authority to the city administrator to fill the city treasurer/finance director position.
Second.
We have motion to second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just a little trivial point. So that you see on the chart there's 3 positions that are in yellow, the treasurer and the attorney and the city clerk. At one point in time in Idaho, those were all elected positions for the city. And then in their wisdom, they decided it was better to have professionals do that than some idiot who can just win an election.
That's not you, Troy.
Will the clerk take the roll, please?
English,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers,
Yes.
Gookin.
Yep.
And as long as we're at staffing, would our clerk like to introduce our new executive assistant.
Well, sure, we weren't really going to try and put her on the spot. This is day 2 for Joanne, and yeah, stand up, they might be able to see you, but it is a little shorter. So we are happy to have her on board. She has a lot of international experience, and so we think she will fit great with our organization, and she will step right into the role that Sherry held previously.
Well, we welcome you, and we're just delighted to have all of your expertise to help us as we bumble along here. Okay, we now move to a public hearing on a zone change request. And before we do anything else, does any council member have a conflict of interest? Seeing none, we have this sign-up sheet. I hope everybody who wants to testify has signed up. If not, raise your hand and we'll give you that opportunity. Okay, Sean, we'll let you take over with the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. So tonight before you, we have a zone change, ZC 123. The applicant is here, Jay Lang. The property is located at 707 North 4th Street, approximately 0.21 of an acre. Their request is to change zones from R17, which is a residential zoning district at 17 units per gross acre found in the Midtown overlay, to C17L in the Midtown overlay. So legal notice was provided as per city code and state requirements, placed in the Coeur d'Alene Press, also posted on the property with 74 mailings that were sent out to property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. So this is an aerial photo of the subject property. You can see it's along 4th Street, Foster's east-west here, just to the south. And this is a site context, a little bit further zoomed in, showing the subject property and some of the improvements that are located on there. So some of the prior zone change requests, I decided to pull together a map to show the different zone change requests throughout the years, starting in '82, which were approved, and an interesting one that I noted in here largely for historical purposes, just some citywide zone change that fell into this property, and it looked like it was denied, approved, denied, largely in part due to the use that was proposed on the property, which was vehicle sales. Those have never been real popular in our infill districts or downtown. In those areas, we've limited them quite a bit. Largely, most of them have been approved, a couple withdrawn. So there are 4 findings that are required for a zone change. Randy did put together a pretty substantial email that he sent out to council that was describing these required findings and what is needed to be made, assuming approval or denial. And so feel free, Randy, to step in if I forget something or they need a little guidance. The first finding is B8, is that the proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan.
And these, just to interrupt, the numbering is different. The numbering that Sean has is from the old findings. If you look at the findings worksheet, these are B1 through B4.
All right. Thank you, Randy. So the comprehensive plan categorizes this area as an urban neighborhood place type, and it is found within city limits. This is the overall map of the city and the future land use map. This is showing the urban neighborhood, and then I zoomed into this map. You can see this blue line is the infill overlay district, the Midtown here, and this kind of yellowish light orange color is the urban neighborhood. And so place types they represent the form of future development as envisioned by the residents of Coeur d'Alene. That's in the comprehensive plan as a guidance document. These place types provide policy level guidance that will inform city development ordinance. Each place type corresponds to multiple zoning districts that will provide high-level detail and regulatory guidance on items such as height, lot setbacks, adjacencies, and allowed uses. So the compatible zones associated with that place type are listed here. Currently, it is zoned R17, and as you can see, C17L, which is the request, does fall within that place type. Going a little bit further, these are the locations of urban neighborhoods and the place types in our plan. And then there's also in the plan policy framework, different goals and objectives that, as Randy's email alluded to, that rather than saying, referring to the staff report, that we would have council pick out the specific ones they feel that apply to either an approval or denial. So there's some here from the community on identity. These are all found within the staff report as well. And growth and development are listed in there. So,
Can I ask a question real quick before
Yes.
you get going there? Can you go back to that overlay part, just real quick? So when you read all those words, they're single-family homes in the past, but that appears that that's not the future, the way it's laid out. The potential for it is to change. Is that correct?
yes, and so it's a guidance document. It's not envisioned that it would happen at any specific time. It's
Gotcha.
a 20-year document, and it's largely based on timing and what the current neighborhood is, what the appetite is for future development, that sort of thing.
Doesn't have to, but it can.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
It's a guiding document. Okay, so there are transportation network maps that are located inside of the comprehensive plan. There's a bicycle network, walking network, and a transit network. And as you can see, this is located very close to our downtown core, so it does have a lot of improvements that have been made. There is a nearby bicycle path. There is also improvements for sidewalks that exist now with the Midtown improvements that happened a number of years ago, as well as a stop for CityLink that is across the street. And I do have a picture that I can show in a minute. So the second finding is B9, is that public facilities are or are not available and adequate for the proposed use. Inside of the staff report, each one of our departments has weighed in on that. Also includes police as well. Stormwater, streets, fire, water, and wastewater departments have reviewed this request, and none of them have found anything that would prevent this change from happening. So finding B10 is that the physical characteristics of the site do or do not make it suitable for the request at this time. And, the site is largely, this part of town has developed. There are some opportunities for infill development and redevelopment over time, but let me get to a quick little blurb that I have in here. So there is an existing single-family structure on the subject property, and directly to the north and south are also single-family homes that have been grandfathered as professional office uses, each with varying degrees of commercial improvements, parking. To the south and the nearest intersection is the fire station. To the east, across 4th Street, is an attorney's office, a CityLink bus stop, and single-family homes that are used as single-family homes. The area retains various mature trees and other vegetation. There's no topographical constraints that would make the subject property unsuitable for the request. However, a future configuration of the site would require some parking improvements as well as ADA improvements to the structure to use it as a commercial use. So here are some photos. This is the subject property right here. You can see the notice in the front yard. And there's the single-family homes on either side. Both of those are the grandfathered uses being used as professional office. Here's an unobstructed view of what that current rented home looks like. So this is to the south. It's also showing the fire department. And then looking north up 4th Street, you can see across the street is the attorney's office, the 4th Street improvements that have been made, and those houses that abut the request.
Sean? Is
Yes.
there parking allowed in front of those, in this block?
There is, but it comes with standards, and so the commercial design standards do come into play with this, as well as the infill overlay district standards. And so there are some buffering requirements for parking to try and screen the vehicles from the street. This home right here did have the buffer. The buffer was removed. They made some improvements. I had them replant the buffer. So the buffer is kind of in its infancy again as it regrows for the second time. So it's there, though.
But there is street
But
parking
no,
available.
no on-street parking.
There is on-street parking where you can see where these bulb outs, where it makes it shorter to get across for pedestrians. Once you get by there is some on-street parking.
Thank you.
All right, so this is looking from the subject property across the street. City Link bus stop is right here, highlighted in red. So finding B11 is the proposal would or would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, and/or existing land uses. Chris Bosley, our city engineer, he is here tonight. It's tough for him to figure out what it may be based upon somebody that says, I would like to do this, but a single apartment unit generates around 7 trips per day, and a council's professional office would generate about 10 trips per day, so about 17 total trips per day would be anticipated for traffic. And it is currently a home, so there are existing traffic-generated movements already. So these are the infill overlay districts right here. There's 3 of them. There's Midtown, Downtown North, and Downtown East. They're all fairly similar. They do have a little bit of differences between them in their floor area ratio calculations. This is the description of the Midtown overlay. And I won't read that into the record. It's in here. It's also in our code. So this shows what the floor area ratios are for each infill overlay district. The Midtown is located here. So with a C17L, it allows both residential and commercial type developments. And so that's the way that this matrix is broken down. So a non-residential use, a basic multiplier is 0.5 of the subject property measurement. And if they apply bonuses can range anywhere from upgraded building materials to public art or even underground parking. Could have a total maximum multiplier of 1.0. The residential use by right would be a basic multiplier of 1.0, and with the bonuses that I had earlier mentioned, a maximum of 2.0 for a total combined of 3.0. That's a multiplier based upon the site size, the square footage. So that's approximately 9,000 square feet. So the land use map, this is currently how properties are being used in the area. The blue is civic, red is commercial, the yellow is single family attached. So you can see that to the north and the south, they are being used commercially as well as across the street. And then this is the zoning map. This is the C17L, which is the same request that the applicant is making right now. It's flanked on either side by C17L. And so with that, I'll wrap up my presentation. And City Council, pursuant to the foregoing findings of fact and conclusions of law, has determined that the requested zone change does or does not comply with the required evaluation criteria and recommends that the City Council does or does not adopt the C17L Midtown zoning. And your findings worksheet is in your packet. With that, I'll end and stand for questions. Mayor?
Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sean, what are the parking requirements for Midtown overlay?
So Midtown is very similar to what the city requires. I believe it's 330 square foot generates a stall. I would have to look that up though, but that is
Square foot of property or square foot of building?
of building.
Okay.
Yes.
And so you mentioned something in your presentation about parking improvements. What was that specifically, or is the applicant going to discuss that?
So that's what I was alluding to by the properties to the north and south are grandfathered in, and so what improvements they have basically are the improvements they have. This is considered a residential use at this point. If they do come forward and say, hey, we'd like to convert this to commercial, then they would be required to bring the parking up to code, as well as ADA.
All right, that was my question there. When we do our traffic analysis, so we talk about the impact of something for traffic, why do we tie it to the proposed development instead of the zone? So in other words, when you do a zone change, we really should look at the underlying uses of the zone and consider what it could be, what's the potential. And so the potential is, with the C-17L, they could tear that building down and they could build something a lot larger, assuming that it fits all into the code and stuff. But why don't we use that potential as the traffic impact as opposed to the proposed use?
I don't want to put words into the city's engineer's mouth, but each zone allows multiple different types of uses. And we can anticipate to a degree what their request is based on their narrative, but it could be a very wide range of uses and a very wide range of structure. So we don't want to say it's going to drive this massive amount of parking and traffic if it doesn't end up being that way. And we don't want to undercut either and say, hey, well, we don't anticipate anything at all happening here. And so we try and use the applicant's narrative to drive what we anticipate that traffic to be.
I understand. It's just there.
And to some degree, using your scenario, if they were to tear that down and build a new facility, under the building permit process, you would have some control over the need for additional parking as well.
It's not just parking, but traffic as well.
Oh.
So I always look at the potential, because we're talking about a zone change, and the zone change is going to be there with the property. I mean, it's married to the property for as long as, until someone wants to change it again, which means theoretically something else could happen that would create a greater impact. And I think that's one of the core issues with a lot of our traffic issues here in the city. For example, Ironwood, you know, as that became commercial from being whatever it was before, and they started building the office buildings there, it created a huge impact on Ironwood that we're having to deal with right now. And that's always my concern. I'm just throwing that out there. I know that this is a relatively small lot, and I don't think there's a potential for anything, but they could merge. So you could have 3 or 4 of them that all of a sudden get together and they build a 30-story hotel. There's going to be traffic. That's just my concern. The floor area ratio thing, and you mentioned the bonuses. And I know we had a design review appeal for something that was going to take place by the Roosevelt Inn. And one of the issues that they brought up, which was irrelevant to the design review, was regarding the floor area ratio and the bonuses. Well, I guess it had to play into design because they wanted to upgrade the materials. And that allowed them to have a larger, heftier building. And I thought we were going to be discussing that at some point in time, just because it seems kind of interesting that allows them to get around, to build a larger building that normally we wouldn't allow on the structure. Is that true? I mean, can they do that if, like right now, it says 0.5 up there. I assume that means 0.5 of the lot can be built.
Correct, right, and that's on multiple floors, so we count each floor as floor area. So it's, and you are absolutely correct that it could become something else. It could, and that you can use those bonuses to increase the size of the building.
Right.
But it's not necessarily to get around any of the city code. It's basically a self-imposed design review.
Right.
Is what that is. It's, hey, if you decide to do this under your own volition, the city will recognize that and allow you additional floor area. So there's no real guesswork to it. It's already codified in code, but it does provide a range.
And again, this is not pertaining to this specific project. It's just, I'm talking about the future and potential for what could happen in the future. So that's really my concern that drives the questions. Thank you for your answers.
Sure. Absolutely, there is pent-up potential.
Kiki?
Thank you. I had kind of a follow-up question to that because it had come up to us before. Are those bonuses individually able to be modified without, how can I say this? Can council change what bonuses are available to that project in that floor area ratio realm?
So,
Let me-
yes and
let-
no,
let me
not
put it this way.
specifically to a project,
Okay.
but to the code as a whole.
So we
if you
could say at some point, we've decided our Arts Commission is doing a fabulous job with art, so we're going to take, if you put art into your project, away from an increase in floor area ratio, or in floor space increase, because we've decided as a council that we have another avenue to provide art to the city. It could be done that way.
Yes, through a change of the actual code. So city council has entrusted staff to be in charge of this in the review process for a building permit, and without having to bring it forward to council. If you would like to see that applied to all projects going forward in Midtown or the other two infill overlay districts, then staff would suggest that you change the code to apply.
That makes sense. So we just need to make a note to discuss at a later date if we want to look at that code,
At the bonuses?
bonuses and code revision. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay. Now, I believe that's all the questions we have for you right now.
Okay.
So we would ask the applicant to come forward and make their presentation, please.
Are there any specific slide you would want to be on?
And we need to swear you in.
Okay.
Okay, you raise your right hand and just answer with I affirm or yes, that'd be just fine. Do you solemnly swear and/or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I affirm.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, council people. I want to thank you for being here and doing what you do, and I want to also thank Sean Holm for the job in the planning department that they've done and spent the time and effort they have on this process. My interest has been brought forward before is to change the zoning on this property, as my daughter has gone to school, obtained her master's degree in mental health and drug addiction therapy, and our interest was to ultimately have her open a practice when she's done getting final educations and learning the aspects of the insurance ends of it. On each side of us, there's own that commercial use and are presently being used on that aspect of it. My understanding when it's mentioned to you, Councilman Guggen, it was that you were talking about the traffic impact and stuff, and is my understanding, correct me if I'm not wrong, Sean, that if it remained even at R17, the traffic could ultimately, I'm sorry, the traffic could ultimately be much more increased than what it would be as a professional office type use. If it was a 3-story apartment building or something of that nature, there would be a higher traffic volume and impact on that than what our proposed use is. So with that being said, I'm open to having any questions, or that's kind of what our interest is in doing that.
Questions? Thank you, Jay. I see none.
Thank you.
Okay, we have one other person signed up. No, actually, she signed up as opposed, but does not wish to testify. That's Suzanne Knudsen. Okay, did the applicant wish any final rebuttal or any final remarks? Okay.
No, sir.
Thank you. Then I will close the public hearing. Council, this action is before you.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question, if I may, for Sean.
You bet.
Or maybe Randy. On, this worksheet is great on goals and objectives. It's different than what I'm used to, having been on Planning Commission before my days as a council member. And so, can you just explain, I know we developed a new comprehensive plan. Can you walk us through this transition? This is our first one with this worksheet. And traditionally, if we move forward, we've adopted the findings of the Planning Commission. I've read the findings of the Planning Commission, as Randy pointed out earlier. They're not numbered the same. Can you give us a little guidance here? And
Turn that one over to Randy.
the code requires that council make the final decision on zone changes, and so council has to make findings. The Supreme Court has disapproved the practice of simply adopting somebody else's findings or adopting some other worksheet. They are really putting the onus on the body making the decision to actually make the findings of fact that they feel are supported by the record. And so that's why this more extensive worksheet is provided to you. You can go down each of the items and point out the evidence that supports it, if that's what you find. When you get to the B1 through 4, those are just conclusions. You don't have to make any specific findings on those because you've made the findings in the section A, the A1 through 20. Does that help?
No. I mean, yes. I understand what you're saying, and we have the worksheet. It's great.
For example,
But
findings A1 through 5 have to do with the notice and the fact that this hearing is occurring. In that case, you would say that you adopt findings A1 through 5 based upon staff's comment that the publication was completed and based upon the fact that the hearing is actually occurring. And that's all you'd need to do with those particular findings. Then you go on to A6, the subject property is plus or minus 0.21 acres. Again, that is in the staff report. It's undisputed. Nobody has come in and said that that doesn't exist. So you can adopt it based on the staff report. The meat of this is the comprehensive plan. And you've been given a separate sheet that shows all of the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan, which you can check off which ones you think apply. You don't have to check them all off. You don't have to go through all of those. You can pick 2 or 3 or however many you'd like, and then make the findings on the comprehensive plan, which are A9 through A12. Just go through them in order. We can deal with it that way.
perfect. That is helpful. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, as long as we're talking to Randy. So Randy, we have 2 things up here. We have findings in order, and then we have the comprehensive plan. We do this one, the findings in order.
You do that one. The comprehensive plan one is for your convenience, to help you know exactly what, that contains all of the goals and objectives of the comp plan.
Okay.
So we made no determination as to which ones apply in this case. That's up to you to decide which ones apply. Sean, in his staff report and in the findings, have made suggestions which you can accept or not.
So, Mr. Mayor, since I don't mind being embarrassed in public, I'll take a stab at this.
Thank you. And there's no need to feel any embarrassment. We're all kind of befuddled here.
Well, I will take the focus of the befuddlement. So bear with me as I befuddle. So we're going to go through, I guess, just read the whole thing, I guess?
Just start at the top and read the introduction material.
So,
Randy, excuse me, I just want to make sure, does they need to make the motion of whether they're approving or denying first or after?
that's,
They make the findings first, and then they make the motion at the end, which is how it is on the
which is another sheet
on
of
the
paper that I
worksheet.
don't have. Okie dokie, let's try this. Everyone paying attention? Thank you. So, Coeur d'Alene City Council finding and orders ZC-1-23, introduction. This matter having come before the City Council on February 6, 2024 to consider ZC-123, a request for zone change from R17 Midtown Overlay to C17L Midtown Overlay Zoning District. Application is JPL Living Trust J. Lang. The location is a plus or minus 21 acre parcel located at the west side of 4th Street on the north of East Foster Avenue, commonly known as North 707 4th Street, legally described as a part of the lots 4, 5, 6 in Block 3 of the town of Coeur d'Alene, according to the corrected plat of said town of Coeur d'Alene and King's Edition, according to the corrected plat recorded in Book C of Plats at pages 144, Records of Kootenai County, Idaho.
Dan,
Did we not know that?
0.21.
Sorry?
I think 0.21 acre.
Yes, 0.21 acres. I apologize for making that assessor mistake there. Findings of facts. The City Council finds that the following facts, A1 through A20, have been established on a more probable than not basis as shown on the record before it and on the testimony presented at the public hearing. The notice, A1, the notice of public hearing was published January 20, 2024, which fulfills the legal requirement for zoning change request. A2, the notice of public hearing was posted on the property on January 24, 2024, which fulfills the proper legal requirement. A3, 74 notices of public hearing were mailed to all property owners of record within 300 feet of the subject property on January 22nd, 2024, which fulfills the legal requirement. A4, notice of intent to rezone the property was sent to all political subdivisions providing services with a planning jurisdiction, including school districts, at least 15 days prior to the public hearing selected by the commission. A5, public testimony was received at a public hearing on February 6, 2024. Turn the page. A6, the subject property is plus or minus 0.21 acres. A7, the subject property is within the city limits and bordered by North 4th Street to the east and north of Foster Avenue. A8, the existing zoning is residential at 17 units per gross acre in the Midtown Infill Overlay District, abbreviated as R17MO, Municipal Code Section 1707910A3, describes the Midtown Overlay District as a lively neighborhood business district with a mixture of usage, including retail, services, and residential. Storefronts will be relatively continuous along the street. With the core of the district, housing would be encouraged both above and behind commercial uses. Traffic calming measures would be applied, and there would be emphasis on creating a streetscape that would offer safety, convenience, and visual appeal to pedestrians. A9, the comprehensive plan, future land use map designated is the urban neighborhood place type. A10, the place types in the comprehensive plan represent the form of future development as envisioned by the residents of Coeur d'Alene. These place types will in turn provide the policy level guidance that will inform the city's development ordinance. Each place type corresponds to multiple zoning districts and will provide a high level of detail and regulatory guidance on items such as height, lot size, setbacks, adjacencies, and allowed uses. A11, urban neighborhood places are highly walkable neighborhoods with larger multifamily building types, shared green spaces, and parking areas. These are typically served with gridded street patterns, and for larger developments may have internal circulation system. Development typically consists of townhomes, condominiums, and apartments with convenient access to goods, services, and dining for nearby residents. Supporting usage include neighborhood parks and recreation facilities, parking, office, and commercial development, compatible zoning R17 and R34 special use permit, neighborhood commercial, CC, C17, and C17L. A12, the comprehensive plan goals, objectives, and policies that are applicable to this matter are as follows. Community and identity, goal CI1. Coeur d'Alene citizens are well-informed, responsive, and involved in community discussions. Objective CI 1.1. Foster broad-based and inclusive community involvement for actions affecting businesses and residents by promoting community unity and involvement. Coeur d'Alene will strive to be livable for medium and below income levels, including young families, working class, low income, and fixed income households. Objective CI 3.1. Support efforts to preserve existing housing stock and provide opportunities for new, affordable, and workforce housing. Am I supposed to be reading all this?
No. Only if you think that those are applicable to this.
You could have stopped me earlier. Yeah, they are all applicable. So let's move on.
Well, see, like.
Where do we go? I could just keep reading it all.
This
Amy
part,
gonna rescue me?
Yeah.
this part we would read, but we're not talking about housing types. We're
No.
just talking about small-scale commercials, so that objective GD 13, see what I mean?
Yeah.
I
That
have,
would take less time.
Yes.
But we're all getting paid by the hour. So, under growth and development, goal D1, we have GD 1.3, which is promotes mixed-use development with small-scale commercial uses to ensure that neighborhoods have services within walking and biking distance. Definitely that applies. Let's see. Yeah, in goal GD2, which is to ensure appropriate high-quality infrastructure to accommodate needs and future growth. That may apply, maybe not. Support development of multimodal transportation, that doesn't apply.
You can just pick what you think fits.
Yeah,
maybe move on to health and safety.
I think that.
You're making the motion, so you get to choose.
yeah, so jobs and economy, goal JE1, retain, grow, and attract businesses. Obviously foster a pro-business culture that supports economic growth, that does apply. On A13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20, those all apply. Affirm those?
Those are all just factual.
Those are facts.
They're undisputed facts.
Those are
They're in the
undisputed
staff
facts.
report, and the staff of the various departments has affirmed those.
Conclusion of law.
So we can go to the conclusion.
Why don't you go to the conclusion?
I think we'll go to the conclusion.
I would conclude that we could do that.
All right, moving along. Based on the foregoing finding of facts, the City Council makes the following conclusions of law. The proposal is in conformance with the comprehensive plan goals, objectives, and policies. Public facilities are available and adequate for proposed use. The physical characteristics of the site do make it suitable for the request, and it was noted during the testimony that there will be improvement to the parking to bring that up to code, so I assume that's included in here somewhere. The proposal would adversely affect...
Would not.
Oh, would not, I'm sorry. Are you telling me what to say? I'm reading what's here, I'm getting kind of phased.
No,
The proposal...
trying to help.
The proposal would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regards to traffic, neighborhood character, and our existing uses. And the reason I say that is because Mr. Lang did point out that it is currently R17, which means the density as far as, potential use would effectively be the same. It's just going to be commercial instead of residential. So that concern that I know people mentioned at the Planning Commission and had been expressed, I think we got a letter. Did we? Yeah, and pretty much that obviously it's a potential now, it's going to be a potential with the zone change. So I don't believe that would negatively adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood. So the proposal B4 is would not. So the decision would be that the City Council, pursuing to the foregoing findings of fact and conclusions of law, has determined that the requested zone change does comply with the required evaluation criteria and recommends that the City Council does adopt the C-17L MO zoning.
Second.
And then we have to make a motion that would be a motion to approve zone change 123, changing from the zoning of property located at 707 North 4th Street from R17 Midtown Overlay to C17L Midtown Overlay, applicant J. Lang, based on the preceding findings and conclusions. This actually says to do this first, but we didn't.
Yes, on your agenda, it does say motion to approve or deny that zone change, and then you adopt the ordinance.
Well, so that was the dress rehearsal. Now we're going to do it for real.
I think you did a very good job.
I tried.
Hurry up and give me a second on this
Second.
motion.
I thought Woody did.
Did Woody get
Woody
it?
already gave you
Oh.
a second.
Okay. Further discussion. Will the clerk
I
take
was
the
going
roll?
to say one thing. So Suzanne came out opposed, but the way this system works is if you want to oppose it, you have to say things in testimony that we can use. Okay, all right, just,
I was opposed for the same reasons that you were. I'm worried about the FAR bonuses.
okay, the FAR bonuses are the issue there.
Okay.
They can't hear you at home, so I'm just echoing what you're saying, so that was it. But I appreciate the input, thank you.
Will the clerk take the roll, please?
Gookin.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Wood.
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Miller.
Aye.
McEvers.
Yes.
So that was to do the findings and orders, and now, Mr. Mayor, I would like to move to dispense with the rule and read Council Bill number 24-1001 once by title only.
Second.
Will the clerk read the title, please?
Okay. Council Bill number 24-1001, an ordinance amending the zoning act of the City of Coeur d'Alene, Kootenai County, Idaho, known as ordinance number 1691. Ordinances of the City of Coeur d'Alene by changing the following described property from R17 (MO) to C17L (MO). Said property being described as follows, to wit, plus or minus .21 acre parcel in the Coeur d'Alene and Kings addition, located on the west side of 4th Street and north of East Foster Avenue, commonly known as 707 North 4th Street, repealing all ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing a severability clause, and provide for the publication of a summary of this ordinance and an effective date hereof.
Will the clerk take the roll, please?
Evans? Yes.
Miller? Aye.
McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin? English? Wood?
Yes.
Yes.
So, Mr. Mayor, with that out of the way, I would move to adopt Council Bill number 24-1001.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk take the roll, please?
Evans?
Yes.
Miller?
Aye.
McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Yeah.
English?
Yes.
Wood?
Yes.
And we have one.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just say, thank you for letting me fumble through this. I hope that in the future, we kind of know which way to go through now so that we can feel a little bit more confident. And I appreciate the work that Randy did on this to get this done. I've always thought, as I was reading through all that stuff, I was thinking it would be so much easier to say, yes, we move to adopt the findings and orders from the Planning Commission. But things are going to be done differently now, so thank you for helping us out.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
with there being no other business, I move for adjournment.
Point of discussion?
Oh.
Before we adjourn. I was trying to get to that before that, as we were talking.
I'm sorry.
We earlier requested that there would be a review of the downtown overlay. I think, Randy, you were going to bring something forward to us. I was just wondering if we can add to that piece of work a FAR bonus review piece, the floor area ratio bonus items review piece.
Did you second the motion?
There isn't a second to adjourn yet.
Yeah, we just
Second to adjourn. Say yes, I
Yes, I
second
did.
it.
Yes, okay.
All those in favor respond with aye.
Aye.
Opposed with nay. We are adjourned.